what I say to a lot of people is that, if you work in technology and change are married.
The change is for a business reason as opposed to just because this
if
is
they're
the
making
progress.
a lot of money, nobody cares as long as the money's coming in. But this is something that's going to fail on the long term. So everybody's saying, I know AI is going to eliminate jobs, but AI is also creating jobs. And of course, there's going to be transformation. So you might start on a role this year, and then in 5 years' time, your job is going to be completely different. But if you're in for the ride, I think IT is still a very interesting area to work in.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the GCS Leaders Series. We've got Anne-Marie Rajandream on the episode today on the Leaders Series. She is based in Holland and she's one of Europe's leading interim IT directors and transformation managers, very focused around transformation and change programs in things such as data, cloud, and also software. So it's been a really interesting conversation because generally we speak to people who have got long-term visions and have worked for companies for a period of time. This is someone that comes in and solves problems and delivers solutions within a short period of time. But what's interesting is how she balances that out with the long-term vision of the company. And I think that's obviously what's given her the success over the years. So without further ado, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Here's Anne-Marie. Thank you. Anne-Marie, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm good, thank you. Happy to be talking to you today.
Yeah, we're very, very excited to have you involved. It's great to have someone who's, obviously a very experienced leader, and that's what we focus on. But I think, talking around this kind of the interim leadership, which you've done a lot about in the last, few years, and will be very interesting just to see how it kind of changes versus the normal people that we have as more kind of on the permanent side. So that's great. So without further ado, I think it's really interesting just to understand a little bit about your background, Anne-Marie. And we're obviously speaking to you in Amsterdam at the moment. I know you're born in London, so you've obviously crossed the English Channel, I guess. But yeah, tell us a bit about your journey as kind of how you come to be here. And I mean, really, we're talking to a leading light within interim leadership, interim IT director, change and transformation. So that's such an important part of how technology develops. So it's great to understand how you come to be in this position.
Yes. Let's tell you a little bit about how I landed here. I really did education in management, and I was really aiming for management of arts. But when I started working in a more legal administrative role, I kind of saw how important IT was. In order to be a manager, IT is so significant, and maybe at that time people did not agree with me, but I saw it coming, and I thought I have to know more about IT, and I was in a position to follow some IT courses, and from there on I said, okay, I'll get a degree in IT as well, and I went to a university to do a part-time IT study. In the meantime, I moved on to market research because I thought that would be a good occupation for me to do. It was rather commercial. I jumped to recruitment, which is a very good way to get to know a lot of different companies. And from there on, I started to work with BT in the Netherlands, working on their largest account. And I started working there as an interim. And really from there on, I moved into consultancy, and from there on, interim management. So I did project management, program management, transformation management, and always with a significant amount of IT technology. So telecoms, banking, financial services, but also e-commerce, payments industry, startups, scale-ups. So I like a bit of change in the work I do. So my work is usually around transformation and change, but I always am a curious body. I always try to, to get into new companies, understand what they're doing, and learn. And of course, over the years, I've gained a lot of experience, and that is something you bring in. You analyze quite easily what's going on. So I bring a lot of experience, I bring a lot of knowledge, and on the other hand, I learn a lot from the companies I jump into.
And obviously, when you talk about the brands, you're talking about ING, you're talking about Tata, you're talking about ABN, those types of companies. Um, you know, working for these big brands and then working for other companies, maybe kind of smaller companies, that sort of thing. When you come into these organizations, generally, are the problems that you see very kind of similar, or does each like each project that you take on, it always has its own strange little quirks that you're going to have to work out? Or would you say generally people have come to this point where they need someone to lead this in an interim position for usually the same types of reasons?
I think maybe the problems can be alike. Um, the disguise can be different. So it's always to find out, what is actually going on here. Why is the request to get somebody in here? And maybe there is a reason you have been told, and maybe that reason is also the reason the person hiring you really has in mind. But you always have to have a bit of a detective mind when you're an interim person, and you have to find out what is actually going on here. Um, which company have I landed in? What type of culture do we have here? What type of people? How is the market? So, given the fact that this is a company that has a certain mission, how does that blend in with what is going on in the market at this time? So that's the way I look at things. I don't know if every interim person looks at things like that, but that is what I do. I try to kind of build the first picture as soon as I come in, and I do that by talking to stakeholders and really trying to find out what is the reason um, I'm here, and what is a purposeful reason for me to be here. Because then you can really give more weight to what you're doing. Because if it is not strange, I have found over the years that people inside a company do not exactly know and cannot exactly see what they need, or what needs to be changed. Else they would need a person coming in from outside. So it's kind of building that picture, and then trying to get useful parts of that picture across to the right people. So I think building a network, talking to stakeholders, and doing your own analytics is very important to do as an interim person, because they have asked you in to make a change, and you have to do that.
And what are the significant challenges that you see? I mean, if you were to put them in different types of pots? And I guess first, before we answer that question, I mean, the way you work is, as an interim director, you're there to really maybe sort out problems, sort out challenges, things aren't going quite well, or as a cover for someone. But generally, I guess it's you're being brought in to turn something around. Is that how you would view it?
Yes, and usually it is technology. So the reason, and I think that's also for everybody an acceptable reason to get somebody in to say, hey, we have a new technology, or we have heard about new technology and we would like to introduce that. Or we have been trying to introduce this new technology, but it isn't working for us. We don't know how and why, but something is not really ticking as it should. Um, and that is what happens quite often. Or the team cannot adapt. We have a department or a set of departments. They are fully integrating. What I also do is merge and acquisition. So that's also a turnaround. So there is usually an element of conflict. And an element of conflict is also an ingredient for drama. So I think there's also a human cultural element that plays a role most of the time. And I think the scope is usually around technology. We have this technology, and the technology is not doing what we want because the technology is not a person. But I think most of the time it is about people.
And what I thought was interesting there is that you said that if you come in with I guess with an open mind, you can really see the problems with the processes. And I genuinely see that when you're within a business, and I've had this when new starters start and they say, why do you do things like this? And sometimes when you look at it, you think, well, I don't really know. It's just the way we've always done
Yeah,
it.
because
Do you find, so you come in and you're pointing things out, and people, I mean, some people might be saying, yeah, that's really good, I'm glad you're here. But I guess as well, some people are like, no, that's the way we've always done it. We have to keep the same.
yeah,
How do you
or
deal with that?
hey, here's another consultant coming in telling us we're not doing right. So I think elevating people is also very important, and acknowledging people, because it doesn't help if somebody comes in and tells you, oh, everything should be different here, because and that's it's maybe I can think that, but why do I communicate that? I think I have to communicate things that can activate people and that is, for them useful in their job. And if it's very big and overwhelming, it's not going to help. And there's going to be adversity. So you have to sometimes hold your tongue and be aware that the conversations you have, especially with subordinates, has to be useful, challenging, and you have to be there if you want to change things and say, okay, everything's black here, but it should be white. You have to come with a plan, and you have to sell the plan, and you have to sell the right elements of that plan to the right people, with the right wording, because you want people to engage.
And I think that people generally within work or within life are quite averse to change, but particularly in this day and age now with, huge changes happening within digital and technology such as AI, where people are kind of worried for their future of their career. What does this mean for me? I guess you've seen that in terms of when you're rolling out a structure, a system, a technology. Do you get that pushback where people are like, well,
Yeah,
how does this help
yeah,
me?
and
How does it help my career?
what I say to a lot of people is that if you work in technology and change are married. So if you want to see that apart, because I also came across people that said, yeah, but you're trying to, bring us to a new technology, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and now you're going to change the way I do my job, and I still have like 10 years to go before I pension. Um, why are you doing this to me? And if you're in technology, you are going to be in change because technology is evolving. Choose another job. Um, but that's the way it is. But of course, I think that change can be engaging. I think that people in technology most of the time do like change because they're often very analytical, and they like to kind of puzzle, and keep things orderly and tidy, so things work well, and they take a lot of responsibilities. So I don't think the initial adversity to change, um, is something that you really have to focus on. It is there, you have to be aware, but it will change as you go along. And most of the time, I find, and that is, of course, over the years, you go into projects, and then you see, if you go back to that company, that people are very much embracing the change, like going to the cloud. And then you talk to people 3 years later, and they say, "Yeah, I knew it. Um, the cloud is very important, and of course, I knew at that time that we needed it." So they have fully embraced it. Even if they go back in time, they feel that they were all for it from day one, which is something I love. I want to be in a position where people do that, and not where people say, "Oh, Emery, I remember you came and then the cloud came." It is better that everybody says, "This is our cloud now."
And that's because they've bought into that. And I assume that one of the ways that people can kind of move their technology career forward is by these change and transformation happening, because how else would you learn new systems, to if you're moving from, I don't know, SAP to Salesforce. This is a great way of becoming a Salesforce expert,
Yeah,
right?
it is. But of course, you can have preferences. And I think also that, more in the 80s, 90s, we were educating people to be an IT person. So, doing day-to-day application management, for instance. And those were people that were not educated in IT, sometimes came from admin roles that were eliminated. So a different mindset. I'm not saying not a good mindset, but sometimes people have been adaptable and adaptable and adaptable up to certain limits. And that happens as well. But for now, I'd say if people want to step into IT, they have to like change and transformation. But yeah, people can get tired of change and transformation as well. And I think that is also because it is sometimes very much entangled with job security, um, organizational change, because that is also a very significant element. If we start changing technologies to realize the benefit, we have to change around the organization that evolves around the technology or the target operating model. So that can be very stressful for people. So they might be very interested in the technology and they find it challenging and interesting. But if you're kind of attacking them from all angles in the way they experience that, that can be quite challenging, and people can have a lot of worries about that. And that is something you have to acknowledge, and you have to do something with that knowledge, not sit down and cry next to them, but kind of pull them through.
And what's your style? I mean, you strike me as someone that's quite forthright, but also quite calm. What's your style when you go in there, and has it evolved over time as working culture has changed, as technology has changed, or has it always been quite similar?
I've tried to be a situational leader, but what you also learn over the years that I always come in as who I am, and it's no use or not functional to try and play the leader or the boss. Um, you have a role, and the role is to lead the change, and you cannot do that on your own. You have to collaborate with people. So I do think that over the years you recognize patterns and you recognize situations, people. So that helps to stay calm and collected. Um, but I think I'm very determined. I'm very eager, enthusiastic, because I have a vision. I come in, I kind of start checking things, look at what is required and urgent, start pulling some strings and start working on my plan. And once I see it, I have the vision, I want to go ahead and do it. And I try to engage people and to, you know, structure, structure, stuff like that. But I always try to not have a blueprint and say, oh, I did this for the previous company, same technology, everybody's going to move in this direction because it worked at the previous company. I rolled out a plan. It was very successful because it is a different company, different time, loads of ingredients are different. So you really have to understand, where have I landed?
And do you go, when you kind of come in, are you initially getting buy-in and understanding from senior leadership, or do you go to the teams and then report back to senior leadership? How do you have your timeline of that engagement?
Well, usually senior leadership is, I'd say, less accessible, just due to the fact that their time is not available all the time. So you have, like, weekly, bi-weekly chats with them, and I also try to work with the people in the teams. I just try to talk to the people in the teams, and everybody around, like, who are the clients, who are the internal clients, who is dealing with these people, who are the security people. So I try to get um, views on the same matters and subjects from different angles by talking to different people.
And when you're going through your projects, we'll talk a bit more about your successes, but obviously a success links into a delivery of a project. So there's always a kind of a finite line within an interim director's kind of life, isn't there? There's going to be delivering that project. In your mind, do you set yourself a deadline? Is that important? I really, really want to get this done by August or something.
I think deadlines are very important
Okay.
to give some gravity to what you're doing. And it's also a way of measuring progress. So in your mind, maybe you then have to swap things and say, okay, this goes better now. There's more movement in this particular area, because you're also dealing with suppliers. So they have to have deadlines and it all has to kind of fit in together. So there are a lot of elements that are simply deadline driven, and there are elements that are more, long term. So you have, like, I think you have waves and big waves, small waves, big waves, and they need to be knitted in together. And that is kind of the complexity you're dealing with. You're trying to kind of, weave a carpet that gives a clear picture, and it has different elements and different ways of managing that. But there has to be some synergy, and that is, kind of what you have to manage.
And you've talked there about a technology vision that you kind of come in for the project and understand and push this forward. Obviously, when you're there to deliver a piece of work, how do you balance the right, I need to deliver this piece of work versus maybe what you understand about the company's vision, long-term goals, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I try to align that because I think you have people that do plain project management. They say, deliver this technology. We have to have that application active in, these offices, these countries, or whatever. So it seems quite straightforward. Project managers do a good job managing that. And what I do is more on a strategic level most of the time. And I think maybe there's a business vision for the company. They have ideas about technologies they would like to use, but sometimes it also is choosing the technologies, doing proof of concepts, talking to suppliers, vendors, making choices. So it's more of the bigger movement. And I think that loads of people in C-level sometimes don't have a vision, which I do understand. But then I'm also working on the vision and talking to them about how we can move into a direction and how that could be beneficial for the company.
Do you think it's almost impossible to deliver something in change and transformation unless it's backed up by a vision, unless it's backed up by a reason why we're doing this?
For me personally, yes, but I think a lot of companies can do that without. I think a lot of people are okay with moving on a operational tactical level, and that's fine because you don't have to oversee everything to make progress. If you are sure about when you kind of need to synchronize, that's okay. And I think it's more like my job to give people clear tasks and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is why these elements are really important because they're kind of hooked into other technological or organizational or timeline critical elements. And that's why I find it very important that we finish this at such and such a time. And if things are not moving according to plan, I need to know, and that's why I'm going to check in with you on a weekly basis, stuff like that. But for me, as a driver, it is very important that I know what I'm doing, that I'm making a big shift, and that a big shift is always in sync with the larger picture.
And how do you build that trust quickly? How do you to kind of bring in your key points of contact and the people you're speaking to? Do you have particular techniques that you use?
I think the main thing is that it is not. One is of course communication, but secondly is always can you deliver, because it's about the result. So you have to show quite quickly that you're capable of delivering. And that could even be that C-level sees, hey, everybody knows what they need to do. They're actually engaged and things are progressing. Or that you are like trying to get everybody engaged, and you do like a road show, and you get noticed. You have good ideas, and that kind of trickles in with C-levels, and they say, hey, I think you're doing the right thing, because a lot of people are talking about what you're doing in a positive way.
I've got two questions now that are linked into this. Firstly, I mean, looking back through your kind of LinkedIn and your profile, you've obviously delivered a number of successful projects. Is there one project, and maybe you could give reasons why, that you're particularly proud of? You're like, that was a great one. I did a really great piece of work there. And if so, why that particular one? What jumps into your head first?
I always like to do work that's about merger and acquisitions or carve-outs, because that's really interesting, because they're quite totalitarian. You have to really do like an X-ray of the company, and it's not only about IT, but you also have to understand what the business is about and what is significant for what we're building or carving out. There has to be a core subject that you're a strategic goal that you're after. And sometimes you really have to unravel that, because it's also a bit M&A is always a bit hush-hush because, until the deal is signed and everything is agreed, you cannot talk about it. So there's a lot of detective work you need to do. But I do like to do that and to come up with a good strategy to do the integration in a way that, it kind of all works like clockwork. So you have different levels, different abstracts, and they all work together, and everybody understands what they need to do. So everybody is engaged, and there's a lot of teamwork.
And on the opposite side, we've just talked about success there and the ones you really enjoy. And I'm sure you have interviews where you think, or maybe you've even done projects in. What are the red flags for you when you see something? I mean, maybe you say, no, that's not for me, that particular project. But what really concerns you when you first come into a project? When you see this, you think, right, this is a really challenging one.
I think it's not the technology. It maybe, a miscomprehension of what the technology can bring. You see that. But the culture, I think, plays a big role. The way, management interacts, the politics. And I don't think that I could say that, although I'm quite looking for red flags during an interview, that the red flags only emerge once you're in a company and you start to understand, okay, this is the way it works. But there are always problems. So I haven't met with a company without problems. And the only thing is that problems become apparent and urgent to solve when the company is not doing as well as they did.
So the change is for a business reason as opposed to just because this
if
is
they're
the
making a
progress.
lot of money, nobody cares really, as long as the money's coming in. But this is something that's going to fail on the long term. And as I'm a person that is looking ahead, I look ahead quite far. Then I already see, okay, here's a bunch of things we really need to fix because it's not hurting now, but in 2-3 years' time, and that is quite quickly, it is, and we need to start fixing it. Those things are difficult to explain and to motivate management to put their money in.
And I guess that's reputational for you as well, is that you want to know that even if you're no longer on the projects, in 3 years' time, someone's going to say, yes, Anne-Marie left me in a really good position and she was also thinking about the long term. That's a reputational thing,
I
isn't
usually
it?
talk to people, try to keep in contact, and people say, oh, I've been thinking a lot of you the past few years. 5 years later, 3 years later, I only understand now what you were actually saying. I better understand. Your words, keep ringing in my ears, because of course, if it is my job to look ahead, at least that is the way I look at it, and I like to do that, and it's just a trait I have. I can look 10 years ahead or 15 years ahead, and see a path, and see what is elementary to get there, and also what is going to save the company on the long term. So, yeah, of course, that is what I'm looking at. And of course, not everybody is focusing on that because people need to do their job. And there's a lot of things that need to happen here and now, and they should focus on that.
And I guess that's why you're successful within your career, because I guess there is a kind of word of mouth or a referable kind of element to this, that you can see successful projects after successful projects after successful project. But you come across problems. You mentioned there, you come across problems, whether it's a well-run project, whether you've been there for a few months, and I guess you just can't plan for events. So when you get these problems, when there are disasters, let's say, or crises, what's your general kind of process for navigating through it successfully? We've had a good conversation now, Anne-Marie. I'm assuming you're the sort of person that's very calm in the face of a storm. I can't see you losing your rag, as they would say in England.
Well, everybody can.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that I cannot get emotional, because of course, if you're engaged, you can get emotional. But and it happens to teams as a whole. I've seen it happen. It's like it spreads like a virus. But in a way, it's really good if you see other people act in a way that you would like to do yourself. Then like, okay, there's something going on. So observing is very important, and then you can talk to people, because sometimes you're stuck with a technical problem and the deadline is there and people are waiting for the results, and there's so much at stake, so much money, reputation, sometimes working for a company or an organization that do not want to be in the newspapers headlines, and they're very much afraid of that. So it is very important for everybody to keep calm, but at the same time, if you're working quite intensely with a large group of people, you kind of interact like family, and then the dynamics change. So it's also important then to solve these problems, but there are always problems, and not every problem is there to be solved. Some problems persist in a company for many, many years, but those problems that get in the way of your results, and or get in the way of a higher level of success for the company, even on the long term, those are the problems you have to attack.
And when you're dealing with these problems, as an interim, obviously you're there to solve the problem, but I guess at that point you have to go back to the C-suite and say, right, this is a problem, and I guess they have to make a decision. We've got two options here. Do we do this? Do we do this?
They do, but not always. It
Okay.
depends. I must say, the bigger the company, and if there's trust, because I think trust is one of the most important things that count in collaboration, but also in the current time and age we're in now, markets everywhere, trust is super important. But once you have the trust, and the C-levels see that you can manage, it is just go ahead and do it. You know what to do. Tell me when you need something. The smaller the companies are, the more overengaged the C-levels are, and also the more whimsical they turn out to be, which is, for me, a less happy situation, because then I have to explain to the teams why we're doing U-turns.
And that's what you don't
So
want.
I like to work independently, while at the same time I'm very much aware of my environment.
So you take quite a lot of responsibility and pressure on yourself then, really. It's you kind of coming in, solve this.
That's the sport.
Yeah. You enjoy that.
Yeah. Yes. It's like a bet I place on myself. I have a vision. I come in, I kind of, get an overview of all the significant elements, and then I yeah, I have a plan. I see it. I have a vision. This is where we need to go, and this is how I can do it. And if I have that, I'm very much determined to get there. But I keep my eyes open, so I'm very alert. And if anything changes or I come across new information, then I'm very flexible to change my plan. But the target is quite clear for me.
Fantastic. So yeah, it's just thinking about exactly where you're kind of going and how you get there. Um,
That motivates me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And have you seen, in your career over the years, changing? Obviously, we've talked a lot about being a kind of a female leader in a senior position in these organisations. You know, you are a trailblazer in some ways as a senior person, kind of going into major projects to sort out problems. Have you seen a lot of change over the years? Do you feel that there is a lot more kind of gender balance, that you're speaking to more C-suite female leaders, or are you still a trailblazer, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I see a little more female peers and C-level people, but not enough. And I think really, I think we were talking about, do I like a challenge? I think one of the challenges still is for me to come in and being acknowledged in my role, because I'm usually working with 100% to 90% male colleagues, workers. So that is the environment I work in. It is even so that if another lady steps in, I'm like, oh, there's a girl. And everybody is like, yeah, you're a girl too. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I do like to have ladies, in a company that are techies. I really love that. And I think they also um, bring a different element to the floor. But um, yeah, still just a few of us, and a lot of the ladies coming in from a university, done technical studies, and the statistics tell us that they leave companies within 3 years. And they go and work for digital agencies or do a completely different role, move to the business. So that is a tragedy, I think, and I hope that really changes.
So what advice would you give kind of aspiring leaders, aspiring female leaders that are looking to follow your path to get into this area?
I think in any job you do, whether that's in marketing or finance or IT, whatever, you're a chemistry wizard, you have to be determined. That is your way to success, and be open-minded. So if your path is not going to be straight ahead, there are the go trails you can take to get back on the highway. Um, but if I can see, talking to people, talking to ladies that move out of IT because they say, I just don't like it. Yeah, if you really want a job that is nice, I don't think that any job where you gain success and climb the career ladder is going to be nice all the time. Uh, but on the other hand, if people find a different occupation and they say, it gives me energy, I'm so happy to go to work every day, and I did not find that in IT, fair enough. It happens. But yeah, I do pity the fact that a lot of ladies start in IT, went through studies, probably were highly motivated, and then step out. It's partially an enigma for me, and I always try to encourage, ladies coming in.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's obviously something that we know is important for our clients. But the same as myself within IT recruitment, it's you've seen a small change, but it's not certainly not kind of gender balanced now, and it would be great if that
No,
happened.
and we need a lot of technical people.
Hmm.
Still, people are saying, oh, true, we're doing cloud, true, we're doing AI, but at the same time, we do need a lot of IT savvy people. And I also can see that there is ahead of us an intertwinement between IT and business happening, which finally is going to happen, because I've been crying for it for about 30 years, but everybody is getting more IT savvy. I think 50 years ago, people would not have believed that what we're doing on our mobile phones, but that we're actually operating our phones, and people do know more about IT. So the intertwinement between business and IT is becoming more and more profound, and that gives a lot of opportunity for interesting jobs in the space of AI, in the space of data management, um, jobs that could be very interesting for everybody, any gender, any preference in life. Um, and I think that will happen soon. So everybody's saying, I know AI is going to eliminate jobs, but AI is also creating jobs.
Yeah, exactly, because in some ways AI takes away quite a lot of the dark arts of IT, doesn't it? The programming, coding, etc., and maybe makes it.
Yeah,
I
but
feel it makes it a bit more
still at the
business
same
focused.
time, there's also there's some um, midgets under the hood doing a lot of jobs. So there's loads of programmers working on AI solutions, because AI is not at level that we want it yet. So there's a lot of integration. There's a lot of people working on cloud technologies, and there are people operating cloud. And those are jobs of a higher level of complexity. So very interesting jobs. So for the coming, I think, 20, 30 years, there are going to be loads of jobs in IT. And of course, there's going to be transformation. So you might start on a role this year, and then in 5 years' time and in 10 years' time, your job is going to be completely different. But if you're in for the ride, I think IT is still a very interesting area to work in.
Definitely. I think for myself, seeing within recruitment, seeing the changes, the one constant there's been is as these changes increase, different types of jobs, systems, technologies happen. So there's always more change and transformation. It's that, as you said at the top, this is the state of IT. This is how it continues to progress and move forward. And I think we're in a very exciting part of the technology journey in these few years. There's a lot coming out that it's almost mind-blowing, isn't it? In terms of someone like yourself that's been in the industry for 20, 25 years, what the promise of what AI and things like that can do is quite exciting, isn't it?
To be honest, I have been seeing this coming, I think maybe 20, 25 years ago, that AI is, for me, top logic. It has to do with a lot of other elements that it did not emerge earlier. I must say, 25 years ago, I was working on AI type of models because I was working in market research. And I was, at that time, talking to people at MIT Electronics, because there was the bottleneck at that time. Chip technology, nanotechnology has brought us, the internet has brought us all the merits that brought everything together so we can do AI. And now we have part of the results. We're not there. There's lots more to come. But now people can see there are significant results. There's something in it for them. Now people are willing to put their money at stake. And when there's money, the evolution goes quite quickly. So that is going to happen. And the other thing is, of course, and that has been there from the early 80s, quantum technology. And that is the next big thing.
Yeah.
So the evolution is not sequential, but there are technologies that are have been waiting to emerge. AI has come first, but quantum is also going to be a big game changer.
Yeah, for sure. And lots of the podcasts, we're into our series 6 now, have started to kind of talk about that quantum element, and hopefully lots and lots of big new change and transformation projects, Marie, for you to kind of get involved with.
Yes, I know that a lot of people say, tech is ruining the world, and in some cases, I can see, to have a point because it's changing, but I do like to work with, the promises of new technologies and really see how can we put that at work, how can we fit that into organizations, and how can we fit organizations around that beneficially. So that is what I like to do, and I like to throw in my creativity uh, to create new things and exciting things.
Brilliant, fantastic. So what's next for yourself, Anne-Marie? I know that you're considering projects at the moment. What's big for you in 26? What's your key focus?
Yeah, so I think for me it would be important to get a project where AI and data are significant. That would be like a full round because I started in market research, which is all around data. So it would be good to be back in that area, and now with the technologies to support that. And I'm also a lover of, like I said, merger and acquisition projects because it's also very much supported by a business element, which I like to do. Anything strategic, looking ahead, and making it work. Um, so strategic transformation, long term, maybe projects that take 2-3 years. Love that.
Fantastic. Well, obviously GCS will be looking out for that for you and or engaging with you on it. But if
Yeah,
anyone's
do the
listening to
magic.
this, please look up Anne-Marie on LinkedIn or kind of reach out to her. Anne-Marie, it's been wonderful to speak to you today. I think it's been a real insight into what must be a very, very challenging position, but one that you obviously are a leader within. So it's great to speak to you, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Cheers.